Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Superheroes, Movies, and Superhero Movies. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm John Pelzo.
Today we're going to talk about The Punisher from 1989.
Oh dear.
Starring Dolph Lundgren, Louis Gossett Jr., and this other guy that was in The Fugitive whose name looks like it's hard to pronounce. Jerome Crabbe, or Crabbe. I don't know. Directed by Mark Goldblatt and written by Boaz Yakin? Boaz? I don't know.
Boaz
Yakin. Yeah, this is going to be an interesting episode because I had seen this movie before, but it was a long time ago.
Apparently I had too, because I had 1.5 stars rated on
Rotten Tomatoes. Or
Rotten
Flickster.
Tomatoes.
Yeah.
Now, don't let that fool you, because I had not seen the movie, and that was a mistake, so that is not my rating.
I know I had definitely seen it, even though watching it yesterday, it seemed other than the final action sequence, I want to say everything felt pretty new. So it had been a while since I'd seen it, and it was forgettable, obviously. But let's talk about the Punisher, the character, for a little bit. I have known even when I was a kid, I knew who the Punisher was.
Yeah.
I think he was, well, let's just start with his creation, I guess. He first showed up in The Amazing Spider-Man number 129 in 1974. He was created by Jerry Conway, with art by Ross Andru and John Romita Sr., and apparently Stan Lee gave him the name The Punisher. Mm-hmm. So with that in mind, I feel like it's possible did he show up in like the 1994 animated series of Spider-Man?
Did.
Yeah, I think he did. So he's always kind of been a part of Marvel Comics, and I'm sure I even had a Marvel trading card of the Punisher.
I had a figurine of the Punisher.
I had an action figure I got for Christmas or for my birthday or something, and he had a little box that connected to his back so that he could talk. It was like his voice.
Oh yeah, they did do a series of that. I had like a Cyclops that did that.
I had an Incredible Hulk and a Punisher, and all I remember is the Punisher. It was very sing-songy for some weird reason, but you would hit it and he would go, "Vengeance is mine." That's all I really remember about it. But he had the skull on the shirt and white boots.
Of course, the skull is his most notable.
Yeah.
My figurine was different. It had like a little cap, like trigger.
Oh, interesting.
To where you'd put. I don't remember if it came with caps or not. I'm assuming it did, but I don't remember them. But I would just use that little, that pull trigger to make gun sounds occasionally, because it was kind of a pain to do.
Yeah, I had a RoboCop figure like that, actually. It was like you could put like caps in his back, so it would be like a cap gun.
Right, and it would make those sounds.
Yeah. Weird. It's interesting that Cyclops had that. Or no, it was a Punisher. I'm sorry.
Punisher, you're right. Cyclops was the voice box.
Right. I was confused there for a second. I was like, why is Cyclops shooting a gun? But that makes sense.
Yeah.
But other than that, like I remember like 10 years ago, when I was really into buying comics, Marvel had a line called Marvel Max, I think, which was kind of their adult-themed comics. So, and the Punisher was one of them. So I know, the comics had like language in them and violence and all that stuff, and it was really like these comics aren't for kids. And Punisher seems to be a character that is always kind of geared toward, even though it showed up in Spider-Man and everything. Or it seems maybe lately it's been a character that's geared towards adults more than kids, and it is because he murders people.
Yeah, I feel like when we were younger, he was involved in the Marvel universe.
Yeah, and even though he used guns and everything, I guess maybe he didn't really kill people or something. I don't know.
There was even a parody of him in the Tick.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's like this guy that used guns, and in the first episode, he was definitely supposed to be the Punisher. He had I don't remember if he had a skull, but it was something to that degree.
The animated Tick?
Yeah, the animated one.
I wish they would put that on Netflix or something. I'd rewatch that show.
Oh, it was a good one. But he was like, just obsessed with guns, and he'd be shooting guns and just be getting like super happy about it. But he ran out of bullets in the episode, and he just broke down in tears like a baby, and he couldn't do anything else after that.
Nice. Going on with my education, I guess you could say, of the Punisher was after that, because I didn't really read those Max Punisher comics. I just remember seeing them in the comic book store when I would go buy comics, and probably I flipped through one or two probably. But 2004, I want to say, the Thomas Jane Punisher came out. And you and I remember saw that together in the theater.
Yeah, in the theater.
So. But I honestly haven't even seen that one, I think, since I saw it in the theater.
I don't think I have either. And I have not seen the sequel to that.
Right. Which
that was a sequel, right?
I don't know if it's so much a direct... It doesn't...
Because it was Thomas Jane, right?
No, it's a guy named...
Really?
Yeah, Ray something. I can't... His name is slipping me at the moment, but he was in Thor. He was the guy that was always eating, like, part of the Thor's group of guys. The big, like, kind of red-haired... I can't remember his name. But it's Ray... It's like Ray Parkinson or something like that.
Huh.
I was going to say Ray Parker, but that's the guy who did... Ray Parker Jr. is the guy that did the Ghostbusters theme.
Oh, yeah.
No, I think it's like Ray Parkinson or something. But no, it's not... like, I think it's a standalone Punisher movie.
That would make sense then. Because, I thought it was Thomas Jane.
And I'll be interested... Well, it'll be fun to do an episode on that one, because... Actually, it'd be fun to do an episode on the other two, because they're going to be significantly better than this one, I think. And I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on that third one. Because the first time I saw it, I did not like it at all. And then I listened to a podcast on it, and they were talking about how just over the top and like ridiculous it was. And I was like, okay, well maybe I was watching it too seriously. Mm-hmm. And I went back and rewatched it, and I ended up really kind of enjoying it.
Huh. I remember that the trailer didn't do too much for me.
No, and it has a lot of like like those neon kind of colored lights, and the acting is like. I mean, there's good actors in the movie, but there's like the acting is like really bad. It's almost soap opera-ish. But I think a lot of it is kind of almost done on purpose, because I think the filmmakers were like, this is a ridiculous movie, and you just got to kind of go along with the ride.
The villain's Jigsaw, right?
Yeah, and he's like way over the. I mean, he did it. I mean, it was on purpose and everything. It was a good, like I said, it was a good actor. Dominic West, I think, is his name, the guy from The Wire, and. But he's like crazy over the top in it and everything. And like I can't remember if it's his character's brother or cousin or something like that, is Doug Hutchison, which is another good actor, but he was just like, every now and again, cause especially the first time when I was watching it and I was taking it very seriously, I was like, this is terrible. Like a lot of the way the lines were delivered and everything. But it's funny how like, that's why I like to give movies second chances, because I sometimes think it's not necessarily the movie's fault. I just wasn't in sync with the movie, because I could be in the wrong mindset, or I could be thinking... although sometimes you could blame that on marketing. You could blame the marketing for why I thought I was supposed to take it seriously and whatnot. Anyway, we'll get to that Punisher in the future.
Yeah. Well, I agree. I find that watching a movie a second time can totally change my view. First time I saw Fight Club, I did not enjoy it. Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of movies like that for me. The first time I saw The Big Lebowski, I didn't like The Big Lebowski. And then I don't really... Like, honestly, I remember seeing The Big Lebowski, and I remember thinking, like, everybody's just, like, yelling at each other. And then when I saw it again, something clicked, and now I think it's one of the funniest movies that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I do like to give movies second chances. I'm not kind of... Unless it's something that you just know. Like, for example, M. Night Shyamalan's, like, The Happening. Like, that movie, I don't need to see that a second time. I know that one's bad. Yeah. But there are certain movies where, like, I'll be watching it, and I'll know that I'm not getting it or something, and so I'll be like, I need to see it again. Like, every now and again, I'll finish a movie and immediately know, I didn't like it, but I need to see it again.
Yeah. The Dark Knight.
Yeah, hated The Dark Knight. No, but a good example of that is The Fountain. Did you ever see The Fountain?
Oh, see, I loved The Fountain.
Did you?
Yeah.
See, again, the marketing threw me off. The trailer for The Fountain with Hugh Jackman made me think it was going to be something it wasn't. And so I remember leaving the theater, and I saw it with a few friends of ours, and they were like, "That was terrible," and I was like, "Yeah, I didn't like it, but I think there's something there," and that one I actually had to do some research on. Like, I had to kind of go online and see what people were saying about it. And then when I rewatched it again after kind of reading some people's thoughts on the movie, after that I fell in love with it. And it's one of up until recently that used to be my favorite Hugh Jackman performance because I thought that was one of his best.
Oh, he's great.
Yeah, and I used to say like he should have been nominated for an Oscar for that role and stuff, but now he has been.
I've only seen it once, and that was back when I didn't see it in theater, but shortly after it was released.
Yeah.
I need to watch it again.
We'll do an episode on it.
You think so?
I don't know. If you want to hear an episode on The Fountain, let us know. Otherwise, we'll just watch it on our own time.
Yeah.
So this Punisher movie, I found out, was not technically released, well, supposedly not released in the U.S. It was made by a company called New World Pictures or something like that.
From Australia.
Yeah, you'll notice in the opening credits it says Australia. So I think it had an Australian opening, and from what I understand, it had even a UK opening and European theaters and all that. But for whatever reason, just went to video, I guess, or something at the US. So it didn't technically go to theaters, even though I thought it did. But if you look at Box Office Mojo, it doesn't even show up. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it had a US theatrical run. So I don't know I have no idea how much money it made. I have no idea if it was considered a hit or not.
Like I said, I had not seen it before, but I remember back when I was younger, going to rental stores and seeing
it. Yeah, me too.
That and Captain America.
Yeah, which we need to track that down and see. Because there's a couple of them. There's one from the 70s.
That's not the one I'm talking about.
Yeah, that one's going to be tough to watch, I think. But the one from the 90s, I used to watch a lot. I wouldn't say a lot, but I would rent it occasionally from Blockbuster. So that one would be interesting to go back and rewatch. It'd be like if we can find the Roger Corman Fantastic Four, which I think you can buy. I think it's available to buy on Netflix, or not on Netflix, on Amazon, but it's one of those things where it's like $20 or something. You're like, do I really want to spend $20 on the 1990 version of Captain America?
No.
So because of this movie, well, I wouldn't say because this movie didn't have a U.S. theatrical release, but this movie, for whatever reason, feels like a straight-to-video movie. So it's interesting to me that it, in the U.S., went straight to video. Mm-hmm. Which isn't really, his Dolph Lundgren, if you look at his IMDb resume, did a lot of straight-to-video movies throughout. It's like most of his career was like straight-to-video kind of action movies.
Is that before or after The Punisher?
That would be after The Punisher. I mean, one of his very first movies was Rocky IV, where he was Ivan Drago or Drago or whatever. I will break you. Which I think made him famous. And then he in 1989, so 5 years later, he did Punisher. I understand why they cast Dolph Lundgren, however you say his name, because he's kind of this big, kind of imposing person. He's from Sweden originally, so he's actually blonde, like he was in Rocky IV. So they had to dye his hair and everything for this movie. But he, in my opinion, has zero charisma, especially in this movie.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I mean, he appearance-wise, I felt like he matched, Frank Castle.
Frank Castle, sure.
So, I wanted to also mention another thing about the Punisher of my memories. I had a Nintendo Entertainment System video game.
With the Punisher?
That was the Punisher.
Was it a just straight-up Punisher game?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
It was called the Punisher, and his back faced you the whole time. And he would just scroll left or right on the screen, and you had this little crosshairs that you would control, and it would pan across a landscape with buildings, and people, bad guys would pop up in the windows, and you'd shoot them.
Did he move? Did he stay in one spot, or did he kind of move?
He moved a little bit, as
yeah.
you would,
I
fix
bet.
the crosshairs.
Yeah.
But his back, like I said, was to you. That's kind of interesting too, because
Yeah.
his skull is
On the front.
right? But that's how I knew Jigsaw was from that game.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'm not familiar with too many Punisher villains other than Jigsaw because of that movie and everything. And you remember was it Kevin Nash who played like the big Russian character with like the red and white striped shirt in the Thomas Jane movie? Remember that big fight scene?
No.
Well, there is that big fight scene. And I remember it being one of the cooler parts of the movie. And I think that character might be one of like Punisher's nemesis as well. Nemesis. So let's get your thoughts right off the bat for the Punisher opening credit sequence.
Oh man, you're the one that pointed out that it was like a really bad 007 intro.
Yeah. It's got some really interesting music, and it's like every now and again you'll see a shot of the Punisher or like a bad guy, and then something will get shot or break or something.
It'll go to the Punisher shooting, and then the image of the bad guy will just like shatter like glass.
Right. And then it's constantly changing colors. It's like this weird red and orange and
it's like these.
stuff.
It's like these just circles that are coming towards you. I mentioned it was like
I was assuming
like
they're like
hypnotism.
Targets. Yeah.
It was very odd,
very strange. One of the weird choices of this movie, too, in my opinion, is that they decide rather than kind of give us a Punisher origin story, they just right off the bat they're like, Punisher's been murdering people for 5 years.
Yeah,
and you're like, okay.
Right. But they stuck with his family had been murdered.
Right. And I remember the movie opens on like a news story because there's an alleged crime boss being released from jail or from, whatever. He had his day in court and he was acquitted or something. And then they bring up the Punisher talking about how he's killed like 125 mafia people or something over the past 5 years. And so, then it cuts to the courthouse and they're like, are you worried about the Punisher? And he's like, that guy was like, nah. But I can't remember when they first bring up Castle's family, unless it was part of that news story.
I think it was the very,
so he was
very
like responsible for the death of Frank Castle's family. And Frank Castle's, it's kind of funny how they're like, Frank Castle disappeared. They're like, this mobster could be responsible for the death of Frank Castle's family. Frank Castle's gone. But this guy, the Punisher, has been killing mob families for a long time.
I thought they said Frank Castle was dead.
They might have said Frank Castle was dead. That's probably... Oh, you know what? I think they did. You're absolutely right. Because Louis Gossett Jr., who was Frank Castle's old partner, doesn't believe that he's dead.
Right.
And actually, I think believes that Frank Castle is the Punisher.
Right. And that's gotten around to the media. They asked the questions about that.
Yeah.
With that whole openings or the first sequence when the mobster from the beginning is getting questioned goes home into his mansion, and then they've got a lot of good security on there because the Punisher just goes right up through the window.
He's just right there. Yep.
And then it was like a sequence of like 80s horror.
Yeah, it felt that opening scene felt very slasher film-esque.
Punisher's arm just comes down through a vent in the ceiling and stabs a guy in the chest as he's walking. And then a couple other things. Guy gets hung.
Yeah, he's walking through the hallway and then like gets pulled up from his neck by a cord or whatever. Yeah, it was very Friday the 13th-esque or something. It was very interesting. I remember we both had that same thought while watching it. It's funny, we just watched this movie yesterday and I'm having such a hard time remembering things about it, and I think that's partly because I remember there's one point in the movie where I turned to you and I was like, I really am not sure what's going on in this movie.
Yeah, it's a confusing movie.
It's like it's a 90-minute film and it doesn't seem like it should be that confusing, but there were 2 or 3 different mob bosses introduced like right in the beginning, and then there was this, if there was talk about these kids, and at first I thought the kids were the orphaned children or whatever from the Punisher because he had killed the mob boss families or whatever. And then I realized that they weren't. They were just children
of current
crime families that the Yakuza kidnapped and stuff.
Right.
So I think like there's this weird plot element where the like Japanese crime family has come to whatever city this is, and is going to take over the crime syndication in the city. And so
75%.
Yeah, and in order to do that, they've kidnapped all the children of the crime families. It's so weird. It's like It's like they didn't have like a storyline for Punisher really, and so they had to come up with this storyline for all these.
That's true.
Mob
yeah,
bosses.
You're right. If you think about it, the story's not about the Punisher.
No, it's really not. I mean, he the only guy that really, as far as I know, that is kind of connected with his family's murder is the guy from the very beginning that he kills in the first like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then after that, I don't think anybody, unless the main guy, Tommy's dad, whose name I'm not going to remember, unless he is is also kind of part of the.
Who's Tommy?
Tommy is the
Was
kid.
He the kid? Okay.
He's like the one kid that Punisher isn't able to save.
Yeah.
And then you find out that Gianni Franco, that's his son,
right.
And he's the one that gets Punisher to help him save his son.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's real. I don't know. It's way weirder than it needs to be for some reason. Really, you'd think that a Punisher movie, the first thing that pops in my head when I think of a Punisher movie would be like a revenge movie.
Yeah.
You know, you set it up where
absolutely
you show us, which is what I think the Thomas Jane Punisher did. You like show us Frank Castle as a cop with his family. His family gets killed. You see him kind of go into this dark place and then decide to become the Punisher and get revenge on this, these mob families or whatever for killing your family. But instead, they decided to not do that or get rid of that whole plot line in the first 10 minutes and then have Punisher just be this guy who's essentially a vigilante, I guess. He's just trying to stop crime in this city and gets caught up in this whole weird Yakuza thing. I know in the beginning of the movie, he's setting out. He meets this homeless actor who sometimes talks in rhymes.
Right.
And that guy tells him that there's a dope deal going down at like Pier 30. So the Punisher shows up, I guess, thinking that he's going to stop this whole dope deal and like kill some bad guys. And then these people in scuba gear show up and start killing people for him. And that's, we find later, is the Yakuza. And so the Punisher really wasn't...
Actually, I don't think we ever officially... Did we find out that it was them?
The only reason why I think we find that out is because the scuba people had knives in their shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And we later see that girl who's like the henchman who's not Asian, who's
right.
part of the Yakuza. She has knives in her shoes as well. So
I gotcha.
That's my connection.
I was going to say, it appeared the first couple times you see her, it looks like they're trying to make her look Asian.
Yeah.
Then later on in the movie, she's not.
Right. So really, I don't even know. I can't even remember how Punisher finds out that the Yakuza is like taking over things. And I mean, the only thing that he saves the children. The children are kidnapped by the Yakuza and being held somewhere, and he steals a bus. The Punisher steals a bus, which, by the way, I want to talk about that scene for a second.
Yeah.
It shows the bus driver sitting at a diner or at a hot dog place or something, eating food, and the bus starts driving off, and he's like, "Hey, that's my bus." And then it immediately goes to the bus, and there's a guy on the bus going, "Hey, you missed my stop." And so was that guy like just totally cool with hanging out on the bus while the driver had dinner, or what?
Not only that, but the Punisher had only driven like
10 feet.
Yeah. He's like, "My stop."
He's immediately like, "Hey, my stop." So, or maybe the bus driver's not allowed to wake him up, so he stopped at his stop and got out to have dinner.
That's right. He was waiting for him.
This guy always takes an hour and a half to get off at his stop. But Punisher politely, pulls over and says, "Sorry about that," or whatever. And he goes and saves all the children but one. Like he's not able to save Tommy, and he says he's going to go back for him.
That's right. No, it was the girl that went after her doll.
There was two of them. There was like Tommy's still in there, and Kathy is in there.
Mm-hmm.
So he finds Tommy, and he goes, "Where's Kathy?" And he's like, "I don't know." And then Kathy eventually, like right then, comes running around the corner. She's like, "I forgot my dolly," or whatever. And then bad guys show up. Punisher fights him. He's able to save Kathy, but Tommy gets taken, I think, by the bad guys. And so he goes and saves all the kids he can. He's like, "I'll go back for Tommy." And I don't know why he doesn't, but the Gianni Franco, the main mob guy, employs Punisher.
Yeah, they team up.
It's Punisher is reluctant. Castle is reluctant to team up. He doesn't want to, but he's like, I think he gets forced somehow. Gianni Franco is threatening him, he's threatening his partner. That's what it is. He brings his partner in. I remember he brings Louis Gossett Jr. in, and he's like, "If you don't help me, I'm going to kill this guy." And he's like, "Fine," but he's like, "But after we're done, you're dead." That's my beef with Dolph Lundgren throughout this whole movie. Is anytime Frank Castle talks throughout this whole thing, he just talks like
yeah. Does he have a deep voice like that, or was he changing his voice for the character?
I don't know. When he was Ivan Drago in Rocky IV, he talked like that too.
Okay,
but I think he does have somewhat of a deep voice. But I think he was, like I said, he's Swedish, so I think he might have a bit of an accent, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And so he might have been trying to kind of cover it up, and so it kind of just ended up coming out real flat.
Yeah, very bland.
Zero charisma, like I said. Like he looks dead in the eyes half the time. Honestly, the only thing I can say that I really enjoyed about this film was like the final kind of action sequence where they are going in to save Tommy. There's a few good fight scenes in that part. The lights get shut out and it turns all red. It's like the emergency lighting or something.
That's right.
And that was kind of annoying. I felt like that went on a little too long. Just because of the lighting, just like I had enough. I felt like I was all right. Let's turn the lights back on. I've had enough of seeing everyone in red fighting. But other than that, there's not a whole lot good I can say about this film. This is one of the worst movies that we've watched for the podcast so far.
Can you think of a worse one?
No. So far, it takes the cake, I would say, for worst movie of the podcast. I honestly didn't even take a whole lot of notes. It's tough when you
I didn't either.
When you watch a movie that you really just kind of can't enjoy. I wrote that it feels like a straight to video movie. It has a 24% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is actually a little higher than I expected. And then the other only note that I wrote was, how does Frank Castle get his motorcycle in the sewer? Because he's driving that thing in the sewer a lot. And
yeah.
I always wondered how he got it down there.
It's like a little miniature bat cave or something.
Yeah.
Except there's nothing down there.
Right. So they do kind of almost play him off as a little bit of a Batman type character in this movie. He is, he is a vigilante trying to stop crime and stuff, even though he's murdering people, which Batman wouldn't do. And then he does kind of have his bat cave, sort of. It's not really... There's nothing technological down there or anything. It's just his hideout, and that's where his motorcycle is and everything.
Right. He's got a religious shrine down there.
Yeah. He prays naked.
Yeah.
Which is weird. And then again, all of his prayers are like, why did they die?
That's right.
You've not answered my prayers. It's a weird Punisher movie. And then my biggest complaint about it, which... I read on IMDb they only got like a provisional right for the character, which doesn't make any sense to me. Because it seems like the only thing that they didn't get the rights to, if this is the case, was the Skull t-shirt. Mm-hmm. Which is like the biggest thing. I mean, because if you can have the character named Frank Castle, and you can have him being called the Punisher.
With the logo.
Yeah. So why can't you have... the Skull t-shirt. So, in my opinion, I don't know if that's true. The IMDb trivia said that.
Mm-hmm. Well, Stan Lee was listed.
Yeah, as like a creative consultant. So I don't understand why, like all that stuff, why couldn't you have the Skull logo? So I'm thinking it was a creative choice. I'm thinking it was on the director or on a producer or something. They decided
Let's
that
not put the
cheesy.
awesome skull on that everyone will remember.
Right. Let's not take his, trademark look. So, I mean, they put the skull on the knives and stuff like that. I remember But yeah, but that's partly why it doesn't really feel quite like a Punisher movie to me, is because it doesn't have the skull shirt. And then there's that, we've pretty much talked about the whole movie already.
Yeah.
There's the final scene with the kid, after, because Castle is true to his word. He helps save Tommy and then kills Franco. He's like, so then the kid's like, "You killed my father," which is, you should have waited at least until Tommy was out of the room. And so then he's like putting the gun to his head. Punisher is, he gets down on his knees and he's like, "Do it." And he puts the gun to his head and he's telling the kid to pull the trigger. He's like, "Do it." And the kid breaks down and can't do it and cries. And then, I guess the only thing we didn't really talk about is Louis Gossett Jr. and his new partner, the woman, who was like trying to find Frank
he
Castle.
Brings her on because she also thinks that Frank Castle is the Punisher.
Yeah. And the beginning of the movie, there's this whole like, "I work alone" thing that he's got going on. And then she's finally like, "I believe Frank Castle is the Punisher," which were the magic words. And he's like, "Be at my office 9 a.m. sharp." But they really, I didn't think about it until just now when we were talking about the movie. They really bring nothing to the movie.
Yeah.
It's
just a shoot 'em up.
Yeah. The only reason I feel like Louis Gossett Jr. is in the movie, like the only reason, is because he gets captured, and that's what makes Punisher team up with Franco at the end to go save the kid.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, there's really no reason for him to be in the movie.
They tried to, the reason he won't take on another partner is because Frank Castle was his partner. It's kind of like The Dark Knight Returns with Robin.
Right.
Batman doesn't want to take on another sidekick kind of thing.
Right.
But yeah, there's nothing to that. That affects Frank Castle in no way whatsoever.
Right.
And they don't do anything with it.
He's not ever. There's one moment where like the media thinks that the Punisher kidnapped those kids, and Louis Gossett Jr. is like, "I know it wasn't the Punisher." And they're like, "How do you know?" And he shows him a picture. I think he shows her a picture of Frank Castle's kids. But other than that, it's like everybody knows the Punisher exists. Everybody knows, that he's killing mob families. Like, these are the two people who just believe it's Frank Castle. And there's, like, it doesn't even help their job or anything. It's not very written. It's not written very well, I guess. It just really doesn't. They really don't add anything. She especially doesn't add anything to the movie.
Yeah, nothing.
Just gives him, I guess, somebody to talk to, I guess, occasionally or something. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's tough for us to talk about movies that are bad, I think, because we really enjoy talking about movies that we love. But we figured we had to buckle down and watch a bad one before too long. Otherwise, we're going to talk about all the good ones, and then
we'll just have the bad ones.
Yeah,
left.
It'll be an episode after episode of bad movie after bad movie. So we figured we got to knock one out while we can.
I had never seen it, so I was giving it a chance.
Yeah, that's very true. And I had seen it before, and I don't remember hating it. Well, I don't hate it, but I didn't remember disliking it as much as I do right now. But yeah, it was tough to sit through, actually, and it's only like 90 minutes long. So, not the greatest adaptation of The Punisher.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, this was like 1989. This was, I don't know.
Batman came out.
Yeah, I don't know if this was like, had anything to do with Batman or not. I would assume that it was probably in production around the same time. So I can't imagine somebody was like, they're making a Batman movie? We got to make something.
Right.
But it could have been. I have no idea.
You've got DC and Marvel.
Yeah.
Of course, Marvel wasn't as big, I don't think, at that time.
No.
As it got in the mid-90s when the X-Men came around.
It had to be one of the first.
And what I mean by the X-Men coming around is in popularity.
Sure. Yeah,
they've been around for a while.
Yeah, they've been around, since the 60s. But I want to say, I don't know what the first Marvel Comics movie was. But this had to be one of the first. When was Howard the Duck? When did Howard the Duck come out?
That was the 80s, I believe.
Mid-80s?
Yeah.
So Howard the Duck was before.
Maybe later. maybe later 80s.
So it might have been around the same time. But it was... So this or Howard the Duck might have been like one of the first Marvel...
I think Howard the Duck was.
Yeah. I mean, unless there were... Because you think about like Batman and Superman, they had the serials in like the 40s and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't think of any like old Marvel movies, really.
They had the Spider-Man show.
Oh, in the 70s. Right.
And the Hulk show.
Yeah, Bill Bixby and Lou Ferrigno. That's
and
true.
Didn't they do a Spider-Man movie based off the show?
They did, but I don't know if that. I think it was a TV movie.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it was like in theaters or anything. So the first theatrical release Marvel movie might have been one of like Howard the Duck or the Punisher. So it might have been them kind of trying their hand out at getting movies made, but they didn't go about the right way of doing it, I guess. And it wouldn't be for another 15 years until they made another one.
I mean, and it makes you think, I guess they picked the Punisher because they wouldn't really be able to do... Most Marvel characters... Well,
have powers and stuff like
every
that.
Superhero has powers.
Right.
This one would have been much easier on their budget and, make it more believable, which they still failed at.
But yeah, I see what you're saying, though. It's like, with Punisher, they could make like a straight-up action movie.
Yeah. And
they could... Again, why wouldn't you throw the logo on the guy, though, and at least, or the skull shirt? But yeah, they could make like a straight-up action movie. They didn't have to have like too many crazy special effects, no wall crawling or anything like that. So yeah, I see what you're saying. Like maybe it was like they figured maybe it was the best risk to take because they could probably make a decent movie and make their money back. Or something.
Yeah, not to mention action movies were popular at this time.
Absolutely. And Dolph Lundgren, I think at that time, was probably still pretty popular from Rocky IV and all that. So, yeah, I understand. It just, wasn't a good...
Poorly executed.
Poorly executed, yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to point out the bus again.
Uh-huh.
When the police surround it. I love how Frank Castle sends the kids out first.
He does. all the police are like pointing their guns at the bus, and he's like, you first, kids. They won't shoot you, I promise. Yeah, real safe. Frank Castle. I forgot about that. That was funny.
Yeah. So, that's about all I have to say on it.
Yeah, this is going to be a fairly short episode, I think, for superheroes, but that's okay. Let's talk about rating.
I said, my fake review rating was 1.5 stars. That's actually what it is. I give it 1.5 stars out of 5.
I don't want to go so far and say I give it an F because I think that it doesn't totally fail. Like I said, at least I enjoy like the last kind of 20 minutes or whatever of that action sequence. But it comes really close to failing. So I'm going to give it like a D, I think. What gives it that extra half star for you?
That's a good question. A lot of times I just go with my gut feeling on a review, and 1.5 just felt right. Like,
just felt right.
I can't think of why I would have given it some stars, but
right.
it wasn't completely trash. I mean,
right. It's not the worst movie I've ever seen.
Right. There was some there was some production put into it. So I give it that. But
I have to wonder if a different actor had been cast, if it would have been a little bit better. Like a little more watchable?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Dolph Lundgren just has he's just so not charismatic. Like I said, he's so one note. He's so flat in the movie. But I don't think it's just him. I think it's the character.
Yeah,
the character just has nothing.
Maybe they're trying to keep that mysteriousness about him.
Maybe.
I don't know if they were thinking that deeply about this, though.
They were probably like, you run, I'll blow it up. It'll be great.
Yeah.
Well, we'd love to hear what you think about the 1989 Punisher. I read there's a couple of reviews on IMDb where people love it. So if you really like this movie, I'd love to hear why.
Did you read what they said?
No, not really. But I mean, I saw that a couple of them said that it was like, they thought it was really true to the comic. I don't know. Maybe some of these characters were from the comics or something.
I never read any of the Punisher comics.
I didn't either. If that's true, I imagine the early Punisher comics were really boring. So no, I would love to hear what you guys think. We would. As always, you can leave a comment on cinemaheroes.com or go to facebook.com/SM and SM podcast, or you can tweet us at Cinema Heroes on Twitter. As always, if you have any Amazon purchases, you can go to cinemaheroes.com. You could go to amazon.com too, I guess. But if you go to cinemaheroes.com first, you can click the Amazon banner. Doesn't cost you anything extra, and we get a little tiny percentage of it, which is always helpful and always appreciated, of course. So I think that wraps it up for this episode of Superheroes, Movies, and Superhero Movies. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm John Pelzo.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for downloading.